Hey everyone, Sean Stevenson here, author of the Throne series, and I love this series so much. It's a series I feel like no one's ever heard of in their life. Everyone I've talked to about it who might have known about this series is like, I've never heard of that. I have no idea what it is. But I'm going to tell you right now, I love this series. It may not be for everyone, but it is definitely for me. What book am I talking about? I'm talking about book number 4 in the Excitorn Adventures, Brill and the Zinders by Peggy Downing. I love this series. I cannot wait to talk about book number 6, the end of the series, but for now we're going to talk about book number 4, because this is the journey to book 6, which... wow, that book. Anyways, so let's talk about book number 4, because we're not here to review number 6. Let's talk about book number 4, Brill and the Zinders. Now, this book, I felt like it was time for a change. There had been 3 books in the series. They kind of had some similar plot lines going on where there were the 2 characters, Segra and Brill. They get captured. They need to get rescued. They're always in a dungeon somewhere. And so there was some needing to change things up and do something different, as well as introduce another fantasy element. This is like a cozy medieval fantasy series with a lot of adventure. There are some different kinds of creatures, like there's Dragators, which are like a dragon alligator hybrid. There's like a giant bird named Stargull who's like sentient and can communicate with them and stuff. There's also some other different elements throughout this world, but I felt like, okay, we need another fantasy element added to this fantasy series. This is, like I said, a medieval cozy fantasy. And so you have like castles and knights and all those sorts of things going on. You also have a lot of exploration, which I love. Here's the tropes I love in fantasy books. I love exploring new areas that have just been mentioned in previous books. I think that's so interesting. It's something that Brandon Mull does so well in Fablehaven, as well as in the Wizard of Oz books. That kind of stuff happens, and I feel like Peggy Downing does that quite a bit here, where different places are talked about earlier on, and you can even see them on the maps inside each book. But you don't always get to them. And then you come to the next book and we're traveling to that place and we're going to explore it and see what it's like. And that's what happened in this particular book. Now, this book definitely changed up the formula, because whereas in the past we had some kind of a threat to the empire, threat to the kingdom kind of thing, where there's an army attacking or someone trying to do negotiations to take over the kingdom, that kind of stuff. This book is about a plague. Not just any plague, the plague. And they call it the plague. And this plague is terrible, it's awful, and I'm just going to say, for a kid's book, the death count is so high. I kept thinking, wow, another person is dead? This is really intense for a kid's cozy fantasy book. I can't believe this is happening, but it did. Now, Segra and Brill here tell from these ancient manuscripts that there is a possible cure to the plague, but it is only known by the Zinders, which is a race of people who have gone into hiding. No one knows where they are. No one can find them. There's only one small mention of perhaps one was seen in this one other kingdom. So Segra, as she does, takes things into her own hands and says, we're going to go find them, because it's the only thing she can do, especially when her father becomes sick with the plague. So Segra, Brill, Rima, and Grouster go off together to try and find the Zinders. Now, Grouster has had some interesting character development, and there's more to come in the later books. And I feel like Grouster must have been one of Peggy Downing's favorite characters, because she keeps bringing him back and giving new stuff for him to do and evolving his character and helping him to grow as a person, which I thought was so interesting, the way that she did it. And so these 4 set off to try and find the Zinders. They have to go into an enemy kingdom that does not want them there. They are searching high and low to find the Zinders, and when they do find them, the question is, will the Zinders actually want to help? Now, I have to say, this book tackles some very interesting subjects in very interesting ways. I think there's a couple of things that are going on here. This book tackles the subject of people using each other to get what they want, and I thought that was very sophisticated for a kid's book, because that can be done in a very like mustache twirling villain way, like, oh, ha ha, I'm just gonna use you to get what I want, and you can see it a mile away. This book does it in a way where you're kind of wondering, like, wow, is that character just kind of a jerk, or do they actually, are they actually like being kind to this person and they mean part of it? And then they also have this other side where they're wanting to get something. I was super curious about that. And it's really well handled. I feel like there's a lot of nuance to the way that Peggy Downing wrote that situation. And also the ways that we sometimes gaslight ourselves when we are talking to different kinds of people. And sometimes we think that, oh, no one's going to try and take advantage of me. Like, that's not a thing that happens. Like, that's not going to happen. And the truth is, sometimes people do. Sometimes people are just in it for themselves and are trying to take advantage of others. And that's why it's important to be careful and to listen to your friends and your family, especially when they say, hey, something here seems a little off, like I could be wrong, but I want you to think about it. And I think it can be very difficult to work out your own thoughts and emotions about, especially when someone has been kind to you and they're doing things that seem genuine, but you're also wondering, like, oh, is what my friend is telling me about this person true? Like, is this person not good for me? I don't know. And so that's a very well done storyline in this book. The other storyline that I think this book tackles very well, and this one is, it's kind of like, I'm going to go here. It talks about racism. And this book really tackles the subject of the ways that people treat one another and the ways that people ostracize others. And I think that that is also so sophisticated. I think this is a really important message, because I think this is something we still deal with throughout the world today. People treating one another badly, people ostracizing other people because they don't like them, because they don't like what they look like, etc. And I think that it's really important, the message that Peggy Downing is sharing here, that, you know, you don't know someone's story. You don't know where someone has come from. You don't know the things that someone else has been through until you sit down with them and you listen to them. And I think that that is a really important part of this particular story, is listening to one another and listening to the things that people have been through. Because at first, there's some moments in this book where people are saying, well, that didn't really happen. Like, that wouldn't really go on. That's not happening to you. What are you talking about? And as they start to listen and then see it for themselves, they realize, oh, this has happened. This is happening, and it's something that we have to change. So I feel like that was a really sophisticated message for a short 120-something page kids book. Like, I just kept thinking, wow, this is really sophisticated. Sophisticated is just the best word I can think of. I really, really enjoyed this book. So I've talked about all that stuff. Let's talk about some of the plot a little bit real quick. I will say one negative on this book is that in the past few books, there have been some similar ways that the characters have gotten out of things. And unfortunately, in this particular book, they use the same kind of method to help them get past a certain obstacle. And that's all I can say, being vague with this being a spoiler-free review. But I felt like, oh, okay, we kind of have done that a few times. I don't think you can just keep doing that, because while in the story world, I understand that that works, for me as a reader, it doesn't work, because you've done this 3 times already, and now you're doing it again. And I don't think that can work. I do think there is, after kind of the initial climax, there's almost a secondary climax, which is another trope I love in fantasy, because I love when there's a secondary climax of some kind, where there's kind of like this moment where you're thinking, oh, the danger's not over. We thought it might be because that was wrapped up, but now this is going on. So I thought that was really great too. I really enjoyed it. At the end of the day, Brill and the Zinders, book number 4 in the Excitorn Adventures series, another great addition, in my opinion. In fact, I give this book 5 out of 5 stars. I just loved it so much. There's that tiny little negative thing at the end, but otherwise I really enjoyed it. You know, this might not be for everyone. It's a cozy medieval fantasy, and that might not be for everybody. It's from the 80s, so that also might not be for everybody in, you know, Fantasyland who wants a fantasy book, but for me, this was just great. I really enjoyed it. And I think I benefited from reading them back to back to back. I think that was a really great way to do it because I felt so involved in the storyline that's throughout the books. And I'll talk about book 6 coming up, but I can't yet. So, anyways, that is my review of Brill and the Zinders. And until next time, everybody, keep reading. Bye!